Hi, it's Lauren here from Waking with Wellness. And today I want to talk about a challenge that so many of us face all of the time in our lives. And this is the ability to say no to things. Okay, so many people struggle to say no to things that really don't serve us, to things that we just do with resentment and feel really obligated to do. And often this is a really kind of deep issue because it's not just about the mere act of saying no. Saying no right now is quite easy. But actually, this often comes from a place of often feeling kind of a lack of self-worth. So this can be something that goes back, has really deep history and roots. But this feeling that we're not good enough as we are, and therefore we need to constantly prove our worth by people pleasing, by doing and giving things to others. And also it often relates to a feeling of guilt. So a feeling like, oh, I really need to say yes to this because this feeling of guilt is just really icky and uncomfortable. And so if you relate to this, you will know that when you live your life saying yes to other people, trying to keep people happy, trying to people please, because generally, if you are like this, you're probably a really lovely, caring person. But when we constantly act like this and say yes to everything, then it can just be completely exhausting and draining and a really unsustainable way of living. Because when we're acting and saying yes to everything, we're really living our lives on other people's terms. And so there's no time for ourselves. There's no time to do the things that nurture and nourish us and enrich our lives. So I want to talk through a 4-step process that's going to maybe give you some tips to help with saying no, because I've totally struggled with this myself, still working on it, but these tools are really helpful when you're kind of placed with a decision as to, should I say yes or no to this thing? So the first thing is to tune into your body. So much of the time, we really ignore what our body is saying to us. And often we kind of have that gut feeling. So that gut feeling kind of might be maybe like a sinking feeling. If someone asks you to do something that you really don't want to do, and you might get that feeling of like dread. And often we're not aware of this. So we have to consciously tune in and just notice, how am I feeling right now? And the more we do that, the easier it gets to really notice. Or it might be the other way. It might be that someone asks you something and you feel this kind of buzzing of energy and think, yeah, this is a really good opportunity. I'm going to say yes. And that's a really good place to come from when we connect into that and say yes in a very kind of wholehearted way. So the second thing is to connect to your values. Now, I talk about values a lot. And a value is basically something that it's not a goal, it's a quality or a direction that we'd like to head in our lives, something that we'd like to cultivate. So for example, a value that is really important to me is independence and freedom. So that to me means being able to do things on my own terms, on my own time, and not to feel really weighed down with obligations. And so I'm constantly challenged with things, demands to my time. And sometimes I have said yes to things out of obligation. And then later I've thought, oh, I wish I didn't say that. And it feels really icky. So now when people ask me, I have to weigh it up. I think, doing this talk or whatever it might be, yeah, there are some benefits, but my value right now is freedom. So once you connect to your values, ask yourself, does saying yes to this take me closer or further away from my values? So in my example, yes, there are benefits to saying yes to do this talk that I was recently asked to do. But the values that are really important to me are freedom and having more time and space and less obligation, trying to kind of really declutter my diary. So when I came from a place of my values, it made it much easier to say no. So the final thing is to act with courage. Now, when we connect to our values and what we really want and our truest, deepest desires from our heart, it often brings up all our biggest fears, right? So we have to act courageously. But one of the things that is so important here is that we address all of the things that are likely to sabotage us. So it's really important that we acknowledge the thoughts and the feelings that are likely to come up in the process of saying no. because it might be a really new thing for you. You might just not be used to saying no. So actually just practicing saying no might be a helpful thing. But notice the kind of thoughts. So they might be thoughts for you like, I'm not worthy enough, or I won't be good enough, a good enough parent, friend, mother, whatever. Or it might be this feeling of guilt. And then when they come up, when you're about to say no, because inevitably they will come up and they will try and sabotage you, you can try different strategies. So one of the strategies that I like to use is to name the story. So for example, once you see that thought coming up about I'm not good enough, then you can go, oh, thank you, mind. There's that I'm no good enough story again. Like, that's a familiar one. And kind of just have that almost playful relationship with your thoughts, so you can kind of start to see them from a distance rather than them being so close and intense. So getting a bit of perspective, because if we don't prepare for them, then they're probably what's going to sabotage us in the end. So just to recap, the top tips for saying no are 1, to tune in, listen to your body, 2, to connect to your values, 3, to notice all of the things that are likely to sabotage you, and then 4, to act courageously, act from that place of really deep set values and be prepared for what's going to come up, but don't let it sabotage you. So I'd really love to hear from you. I've got a worksheet you can download below, so a free PDF just to help you to think about this, think about times when you have said yes to things that you really wish you hadn't. And then I'd like you to try and commit to one action that you could take. So when something comes up in the next week or a couple of days, then to try this method out and just to notice how it feels. Probably quite scary and new if you're not used to saying it, but perhaps also quite empowering. It can be really empowering when we start to act on our own values and our own terms. So I'd love to hear from you. You can either comment below or on the Facebook group or drop me an email. And I will see you soon.